Okay, we are very fortunate to have another brilliant speaker today. Before I introduce him, I would like to share the purpose of the ADP lecture series. A design lecture series for architectural design project, or what we call as the ADP lecture series, is a platform to expose students to real-world learning by engaging them to distinguished guest speakers' expertise through their design works, practices, philosophy, research interests, and advocacies. The lecture topics are aligned to the themes and the focus of our studio, likewise aid and inspire students in the development of their final design project. Okay, our lecture for today focuses on sustainability. Okay, as our speaker lecture synopsis, sustainability is the ability to maintain a steady condition over an indefinite period of time. Resilience is the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties. Sustainability is about establishing and maintaining the systems required to assure long-term existence. Resilience is about quickly and consistently being capable to recover, to overcome crises, disturbances, and disruptions. Okay, to design buildings, the two concepts are tightly intertwined. To design a building with resilience means to start the design process by assuming the natural or man-made situation that may distress the normal use and operation of a building, by challenging its integrity or by endangering and or causing disruptions or disturbances to its occupants. Resilient design is always locally specific, as the environment plays a critical role in determining the factors that make a building resilient or not. Okay, these factors can be studied under the 7 categories or principles such as redundancy, adaptability and flexibility, interdependency, regenerative and restorative, durability, value, and cultural responsiveness. Okay, again, our distinguished guest speaker today is Dr. Miguel Rogles-Cardona. He is an associate architect at the VERITAS Design Group since 2018, and he aims to become a registered architect in Malaysia by 2020. Good luck, Miguel, on your part 3 exam. Okay. Miguel's professional development has grown parallel to VERITAS' goal of achieving a more global presence. From a strong research background and passion for architectural discipline, he is oriented to creating resilient, innovative, change-maker, and memorable design globally while keeping highest level standards that VERITAS has pursued since 1987. Miguel currently leads several key projects at VERITAS. Among those, he played a leading role in one of VERITAS' state-of-the-art projects, the Oxley Tower in KLCC, which is an 80-story mixed-use development and is for completion targeted in 2023. Miguel has widely spoken on design at several universities in Spain, Italy, and Malaysia, and participated in local and international design conferences, forums, and was being featured in several local and international architectural and design magazines. Miguel graduated as an architect from the School of Architecture in Seville, Spain in 2009. As one of the top-ranked students in his school, he got his master's degree in theory and practice of architectural design with specialization in modern form in 2011, and his PhD in architectural design in 2014, both from the School of Architecture of Barcelona, as one of the youngest doctorates ever in his school. He worked at Form Research Group at the same school, as well as Gerber Architekten in Germany, and at Francine and partners in Italy before joining Veritas in 2015. Okay, without further delay and further ado, please welcome our distinguished guest speaker for today, Dr. Miguel Angel Rogles-Cardona. Miguel, feel free to share your screen and you may start anytime. Thank you.
Thank you, Prince. That was a very long introduction. Almost, I don't know what else to say after all that. Okay, the sound is good. I suppose if throughout any point during the talk you lose me or the sound is not clear, please let me know and I will change to my headset. I will share my slides now.
Miguel, would you like to see our students? I think you want to request for them to open their cameras, right?
Well, that would be great, especially because you told me that there are some who are sitting together in some classroom, is it?
Yes, yes.
Right. I'm actually quite happy to see that there are in the call 54 persons, and it's a good crowd. So as I mentioned to you before, I don't like talking to speaking crowds. I feel very shy. It gets very intimate. So I prefer a larger
crowd. Yeah.
So I see some faces, but many are still off. But that's all right. As long as we can take some group photo later, if that is possible.
Yes, we will.
I will be happy already. Okay, let me share my screen. Okay, can you see my slides? All right. And yes. The slides are clear and the sound is clear, so I can start. I will pin you, Prince, so in case that something goes wrong, I follow up with your face. Your face will tell me that everything is all right. All right. Good afternoon, and thank you, Prince, for your very long introduction and for your invitation once more to deliver a talk at Taylor's. It has been a while, I think, since I spoke for the last time at Taylor's, and I always feel very happy, honestly, when I am invited by you guys. As most of you are aware, our collaboration with Taylor's University started almost 6 years ago in June 2016. So soon we will be signing our fourth biannual collaboration. So we are looking forward to that. Hopefully we can have a face-to-face event in June this year. We cross fingers. One of the key messages that I would like to convey today is that sustainability and resilience are far from being any new idea or concept, as old as architecture is. Let me explain. This means that the environmental capabilities of any building, and with environmental, I mean the building ability to respond to the context, whether climate or social-wise or economy-wise, is implicit in the architecture itself, in the way how the building has been planned and how this planning of the building has taken into consideration the environmental demands, such as the temperature, the seasonal variations of temperature, rainfall regime, humidity, wind direction, airflow, sun orientation, the quality of the air, the available materials and technology at any certain point, or even the means of transportation to bring those materials to the construction site. And of course, other cultural and artistic values that are embedded in every building as well. So this relationship between environment, the context, and the design is nothing new, but indeed can be observed in popular architectures all over the world. For example, is it all right? Yes.
Guys, please mute your microphone. I think someone forgot.
Sorry, all right. That's all right. For example, the Mediterranean vernacular constructions in the picture show architecture ability to adapt to the environment and the conditions of the place. the required protection from the sun translates into thick walls, small windows, wide cubic volumes that reflect the sun and the heat, and flat roofs that at the same time collect the very little rainwater. The imposed requirement of building with materials that were nearby, as well as the technological capabilities at any moment, created as well architectures that are typical or that belong to a certain latitude and climate. This means that architecture has always responded to the environmental conditions and to the context of any certain place. Looking closely in this region, locally in Malaysia, the Long House, or in Indonesia, the Batak House, are other examples of how architecture has traditionally adapted to the specific environmental conditions of the place and to the available materials and technology to generate constructive systems that are specific to a place and typologies that are specific to a region. This means that architecture has always, and not only recently, tried to respond to the environmental and to the contextual conditions of any particular place. Likewise, at VERITAS, we did not start doing sustainable or even resilient buildings just a few years ago, when these words started to become popular or common in the industry or in society, but indeed the preservation of the environment through what we do, through our buildings and design, master plans, has been part of our core business since our foundation 35 years ago. Indeed, environment is one of our 5 core values. A few years ago, after having completed so many green buildings, indeed more than 35, and I believe that we are the practice in Malaysia that has achieved the largest number of green certified buildings, we decided to launch our own green check assessment tool, our VERITAS Green Check, that allows us from very early stage in our projects to understand and to ascertain how sustainable our future building will be, and to help as well our clients to focus on the areas where they may improve the sustainability of their buildings in case that they wanted to apply to any of these conventional green rating tools available in the market. By the way, we are in the process of getting our VERITAS Green Check endorsed by the United Nations Global Compact. So hopefully it will soon become another of the usual green rating tools available in the market. In 2013, soon after the GBI was launched, we saw as well the opportunity to create our own sustainability consultancy, and we set VERITAS Environment, which now delivers with a team of engineers sustainable green certified buildings in the region, but also helps building owners to improve the environmental performance of existing buildings. On another hand, our Fund for Excellence, through which we dedicate a certain percentage of our annual profits to innovations that persuade design excellence or innovation or excellence in social responsibility towards the built environment. In 2007, our VERITAS Care Scheme was created to monitor our in-house carbon footprint and also to reward and to discourage behaviors or habits that are not environmentally responsible, with the objective of tracking our own carbon footprint and to hopefully become a carbon neutral workplace by 2050. And last, 2 years ago, when the current health concern started, we understood that it was important to go beyond sustainability towards a more complex concept that encompasses not only sustainability, but many more aspects. And this is resilience, which is a way of assessing how our buildings and our cities or societies and even the people are ready to face another set of challenges or crises and to recover quickly or to bounce back. Some of these challenges are natural, some are caused by men, some may affect the entire world, like the climate change, and some may be common or specific to a region. For example, in Malaysia, we suffer haze, we suffer floods, we suffer blackouts, and, well, political instability as well. Both these concepts, sustainability and resilience, are not different, are indeed tied and intertwined and operate together. But perhaps we could say that sustainability is a part of resilience, but resilience is a much wider subject matter. In VERITAS, since early 2000s, we have put in place all this series of life ever-evolving initiatives that guide us in our commitment to preserving and to protecting the environment and the built environment. So moving ahead, I would like to give a couple of a couple of book definitions that hopefully will help us to understand what we are going to be talking about right after. On the one hand, sustainability is the ability to maintain a steady condition over an indefinite period of time, and resilience is the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties. These are two dictionary definitions of these two concepts. So sustainability is about establishing and maintaining systems that are required to assure long-term existence, hence resilience. And resilience is about how, throughout those mechanisms, we are able to recover, to overcome crises and disturbances or disruptions. So what does resilience entail when it comes to designing a building? To design a building with resilience means to start the design process by identifying, by thinking, what are the probable, natural or improbable, natural or man-made situations that may distress the normal use of our buildings and the operations of our buildings and the integrity by endangering or by causing disruptions or disturbances to the occupants. Resilient design is always locally specific. This means that the context always plays a key role in determining what are the features that make our buildings resilient or not. We have studied a series of aspects that or considerations that allow us to determine whether a building is resilient or not, and to what degree a building may be considered as a resilient building. And we have categorized them into 7 principles for resilient design in architecture. The first one is redundancy, which talks about the integration of duplicated systems and structures. The second is adaptability and flexibility, which talks about the ability to respond to the local context and to accommodate changing environmental and social conditions and needs. The third one is independency, which speaks about the ability to offer a holistic approach to the building, to the site, and to the city, and even the community. Regenerative and restorative, which recognizes the incorporation of systems that reduce the demand or the reliance on fossil energy sources and infrastructure systems, while reducing the carbon footprint of the building. The fifth is durability, which recognizes the ability to offer long-lasting, long-term value to the building, to the occupants, and also to the owners. Value is the sixth that describes the capacity to provide social, environmental, and economic benefits to the occupants, the owners, and even the surrounding community. And the last one, but perhaps the most visible to people, to the general public, is the cultural responsiveness that reflects on the ability of a building to acknowledge the local culture, to create community long-lasting memories. So you can see that all some of these principles are purely technical, and some of them are passive, related to the way how we place certain systems or make certain design decisions during the process, during the design process. And some others are active, and require a certain investment by the building owners. But there are as well some of these notions or principles that are social or cultural or even philosophical. This means that maybe intangible, but their benefits though are pretty much visible. We will see now some examples of all these 7 principles for resilient design through quite a number of projects that we have done in Veritas for the last 30 years. The first principle, redundancy, again talking about duplicative structural systems that may prevent the building from collapse in case of structural failure, but also duplicative mechanical and electrical systems that allow uninterrupted supply of services in case of service disruption, or even duplicative security or safety systems that ensure the integrity of the building or the safety of the occupants during emergencies or accidents or any crisis. And redundancy also talks about how these structures and these systems can be designed and streamlined to achieve their maximum efficiency when working together. The 11th of September 2001 terrorist attack in Manhattan changed forever the way how we design tall buildings, and in this case, super tall buildings. You can see at the bottom left corner of the slide, the floor plate of the former World Trade Center with its steel core and exoskeleton, which made the building unexpectedly vulnerable to the terrorist attacks, and in this case, to the fire. After several years of skepticism about whether we should continue designing and building very tall buildings and the risk of those buildings to become terrorist targets, engineers and architects came out with a engineering solution, a design solution called buttress core. This is a structural design geometry that duplicates the possible path for a building, for the building loads to reach the ground or the terrain. This means that this system prevents the building from a progressive structural collapse in case of a structural failure, because the loads can basically find an alternative path to the ground. The buttress core was also used in the Burj Khalifa in Dubai, the current tallest building in the world that you can see as well at the bottom. And it was as well used in our Oxley Towers, which is a super tall building, 345 meters high, that will be completed in ADLSIII by 2023. You can see it now under construction at level 45, a bit slow. There are also mechanical and electrical systems that can be rethought, reconfigured, or even relocated to make our buildings more resilient, to improve our buildings' readiness, to face challenges and to bounce back after crisis. Some of these instances are present as well in our project, in our Oxley Towers. For example, there are backup transformers. This means that all components are backed up in case of malfunction of any main transformer. All the essential distribution boxes are backed up by diesel gensets. All the chillers and pump sets have second sets, standby sets. And all the backup generators and pumps which are usually located at the basement, what may render them unusable in case of flood, are located at higher floors, at podium floors, to protect them from such situation. As well, this is something that we don't have, but we may have, or we may consider, all the domestic water tanks. Instead of providing the usual 2-day storage, we may provide 4-day storage split in 2 different tanks. So in case that one tank was under maintenance or the water corrupted for any reason, you will still have another second source to prevent the water disruption. Also, there is redundancy in security systems that can contribute to making our buildings more resilient and ready to face security threats. We talk here about fire control centers and security control rooms but also about many other security features or devices that can be displayed and incorporated throughout the building to prevent different security hazards, such as boom gates, vehicle scanners, access cards, destination-based lifts, shuttle lifts, luggage scanners. All these features, although you may consider or you may think that are pure convenience, but indeed there are passive ways of improving the safety of a building by introducing, for example, sky lobbies that force visitors to pass by a second tier of checking before achieving their final destination within the building. And this is very important when we talk about buildings of this scale and this complexity. When we talk as well about very tall buildings, we must understand that fire protection in these buildings relies on their own internal systems. This means that super tall buildings require far more robust considerations in both their passive and active firefighting strategies. Some of the most effective passive design considerations that we can impose to our tall buildings, and not necessarily super tall, but high rises to make them more resilient and resistant to fire, are the provision of wider staircases that overcome the counterflow when the firemen are climbing the building, and also to minimize the congestion in the staircases due to evacuation fatigue. The use of performance-based engineering for critical areas such as atriums or large facilities where the performance of the fire, the smoke, and even the people can be simulated to anticipate and design better and to make our buildings safer. The use of class 0 non-flammable and class A1 non-combustible materials, which limits the fire load inside our buildings, and also, and very importantly, the regular maintenance and testing of all the fire active systems. Also, when we talk about tall buildings, again, not necessarily super tall, we may be talking about 40, 50 story towers that are pretty common in our context. We must consider and design for the evacuation of our buildings. There are, in general, three main strategies for evacuation of buildings. The evacuation can be total, which means that everybody leaves the building, but this is impractical for tall buildings or very tall buildings, because simulations show that the amount of time needed to get out from a tall building can be between 2 to 3 hours because of the fatigue and the tiredness and the counterflow of the firemen. A second strategy is applicable in this case, in the project that we are seeing on the screen, is phased evacuation. This means that the alarm is sown and the public address system addresses a phased evacuation by components of the building. In this case as well, we use the sky bridges as an alternative means of escape for any of the towers. This means that if there is an emergency in one of the towers, people may cross through the bridge to the adjacent tower and take the lift to the ground. And also, more and more commonly, we are using refuge floors and elevators as means of evacuation or fire protection in our very tall buildings. Last, the stay in place strategy, it's not evacuation, it's a strategy, relies on the very rare chances for any building to collapse due to fire. And in many cases, it may be safer to just stay within the fire compartment, the unit or the hotel key, and wait to be rescued. The second principle for resilient design is adaptability and flexibility. And this talks about buildings' ability to respond to the local context and to accommodate to changing environmental and social conditions and needs, but also about the ability of a building to be retrofitted and repurposed. In this regard, there are two factors related to the floor plate design that are key. The first is the efficiency. This means that we need to ensure that the area of the floor plate that we are proposing allows a commercially viable efficiency. And second, the depth of the floor plate to be such that daylight can penetrate to the bottom of the floor plate. A couple of examples here in the slide. These are our Menara Prestige and also one of the floor plates of Oxley Towers. Talking about the ability of buildings to be retrofitted, the choice of the structural system is also key. In this slide, you can see a simple comparison between the two more commonly used structural systems, PET or post-tension, slab and beams, or conventional reinforced concrete RC structures. While PET is very popular as it can be lighter and faster and hence cheaper than conventional RC structures, it's also true that PET slabs, post-tension slabs, are less flexible in the future in case that we want to add large openings or creating openings for services. For example, to transform an office building into a residential or hotel. I give you an example, again, using Oxley Towers. Above Tower 1 residences and hotels, typical floor, and below Tower 3 offices. And both floor plates have a similar size and geometry. And in this case, the provision of RC versus PET slab for Tower 3 and columns versus shear walls, despite the initial higher cost or even longer construction time, may offer the possibility in the future to easily retrofit Tower 2 as a hotel or as residences, if so wanted. Likewise, the provision of RC versus PET structures at the podium car park floors may offer as well the possibility in the future to retrofit the car park for offices or retail spaces or even facilities, quarantine centers, or any other commercial uses that may be preferred once the public transport network and usage has improved and the pressure on private cars is reduced, becoming cars less present in the city. So it's important to make these decisions when we design buildings, how buildings can be adapted in the future and throughout their lifespan. Another way of making our buildings more resilient by making them more adaptable and flexible is the incorporation of AC farms, where the individual compressors for each of the units are placed together in a common area. This approach has many advantages. The first one is that all the compressors are facing the less favorable views, so minimizing as well the noise to the habitable areas and the unpleasant views from inside the units towards outside. Also, putting them together in a certain area allows the facade to express without the constraint of having to deal with the aircon ledges, and also to maximize unobstructed views. It also allows easier maintenance because all the units can be accessed from a common area without disturbing the residents or the occupants of the units. And very importantly, for hotel and office blocks, typical floors can be easily retrofitted with a centralized system into any other use. In the earlier slide, we saw Oxley, and this one, we see another of our buildings where we use AC farms. Aircon farms is our Banque Towers in Bukit Nanas. You can see the aircon farms in blue behind the staircases. In W Hotel and Residences in KLCC, all the compressors for the residential units are grouped together, but not in a certain area of the floor or at every floor, but in a fully dedicated MEP floor where all the compressors are packed together. This allows the facade of the building to go on without any interruption or any disruption due to the aircon ledges. This is a visual of our star residences in KLCC as well. The provision in this case of openable windows and balconies and aircon ledges, sometimes not preferred when doing curtain wall buildings, has also several benefits and advantages. You can see here a typical detail of the facade modulation and the aircon ledges detail. In the event of fire, or if there is a mechanical or power failure of the aircon, the provision of openable windows allows ventilation for a curtain wall space. But also, and we have discovered throughout the last 2 years, that having these balconies, this outdoor opportunity is very helpful under lockdown situations. So this is a beautiful, I believe, example of how openings can be created in a curtain wall building. This is a couple of views of this building, which is completed. You can see here the same principle, how windows and aircon ledges and even private pools can be incorporated in this other building under construction. Indeed has topped up already the structure, almost 60 stories in KLCC as well. And in this case, every unit is provided with a small outdoor deck and a swimming pool. And these are some of the visuals of how the building will look like when completed. And a last example, again, Oxley Towers, and how the openable windows can be integrated in a larger facade pattern without compromising the composition and even taking part both externally and internally of the composition of the facade. The third principle for resilient design in architecture is interdependency. Interdependency talks about how a building offers a holistic approach, not only to the site, but also to the city and to the community. Again, star residences, the developer proposed to upgrade and to undertake the piece of land surrendered to the city as part of the DBKL's plan to improve the walkability along Yalam Kwak Sen. So we took this opportunity to create a pedestrian boulevard that we branded as Walk of Fame that funnels pedestrians from Yalam Kwak Sen to KLCC. And this is a couple of pictures of how this boulevard along the retail podium sets up precedent for any future building along Yalam Kwak Sen, which eventually we believe will improve the walkability of this entire stretch of the city. Oxley, again, is another example of how our buildings can contribute to creating more resilient cities by making them more walkable. In this case, the 3 towers are set back, forming an arrival forecourt, a public open plaza that funnels pedestrians into an indoor street that cuts across the city mega block, drawing pedestrians from Yalang Ampang to KLCC Park. This is in the visuals, we can see the arrival to the public plaza before the retail, covered by a very extensive canopy, which gathers pedestrians through this pathway throughout the building, and also linking to KLCC Park and the mosque at the back. On another hand, and this is something that you may not have thought in this manner, mixed-use developments are indeed, by default, resilient. And this means, and I give this example again with Oxley, when there are different functions or different uses, residences, office, hotels, retail, this means that we have the opportunity to create a city within a city. This allows people not to commute to go to work or to stay in a hotel that is adjacent to the office where they are having a meeting, or to do the groceries or their shopping in the mall that is downstairs. Of course, we are talking here about a very prime building in the prime area of the city, but imagine that mixed-use developments that do not all need to be so fancy and so expensive. We may have mixed developments in the suburbs of the city and still have offices and retail and hotels, and this reduces the need of commuting and the associated transport pollution that people incur when they need to move from one side to another of the city. But also, having mixed-use developments means that we have buildings that are alive for 24 hours, 7 days, versus the daily use cycles of other buildings that are used for a single purpose. Normally, residential buildings will be used in the evening and at night until early morning, and then the rest of the day will be generally empty or mostly empty. And office buildings will be used from 9 until 5 or 6 p.m., but then at night and in the evening will be empty. So having these buildings that put together all these components means that there are systems that will be always running, sometimes for the office, sometimes for the residential. So systems can be streamlined to be more efficient and to support different needs at different times throughout the day. Within the building as well, the large provision of landscape and outdoor spaces at the ground floor, at the podium decks, at the sky decks, at the sky bridges, provides the occupants with multiple outdoor opportunities within the compound without needing to go out to the street. So brings a ground plane to many or to several floors. Indeed, considering the building footprint, once the building is completed, there will be 43% more green areas than before the building was there. This is a master plan by one of our clients in Kuching. We were commissioned to develop the site marked in red as a business and leisure park, as a mixed-use development. And in our proposal, as you can see here, there is a long spine block that accommodates most of the residential uses or apartments. And at the front, a 3-story retail mall with 2 blocks, 2 oval or elliptical blocks on top that accommodate a hotel and Soho and a small office block. In the section, you can see how the uses are intertwined, sharing a common car park at the lower floor, and how the different components stack on one another. But besides the attractive of the overall building or complex of buildings, in our opinion, the most important gesture that our proposal introduces and contributes to this master plan is the creation of this outdoor semi-shelter boulevard that at the same time creates a communal recreational space, plenty of trees, water, canopies, al fresco, restaurant, benches, and not only for the residents of the building or for the occupants of this building, but for the entire community. But more importantly, this boulevard connects 2 very important nodes within the master plan: the international school at the north and the hospital at the southwest. But indeed, when we were invited to propose another 2 large buildings throughout within this master plan, we understood that indeed the key role of our first proposal was even larger, because the business and leisure park and the boulevard that we created does not only connect the hospital and the international school, but indeed links through a series of pedestrian and green network spaces the future LRT station, we hope, and the second phase of residential development farther to the right in the development. So indeed, our boulevard has a much larger role than simply connecting the 2 adjacent buildings to it. In our proposal, the green focus extends to the architectural of every building, to the architecture, sorry, of every building, and almost every piece of roof is colonized by green and water, creating plenty of outdoor opportunities for the users of any of the buildings, and not only for the users of the buildings or the inhabitants of the apartments, but for the entire community. There is an immense program of public facilities offered for public and for residents and users. Continuing with some of our buildings offering a strong, responsible urban approach that creates and improves the public realm, we have as well our Selangor Estate Development Corporation headquarters, or PKNS headquarters in Shah Alam. This building reflects or reflected the PKNS corporate identity and their goal to be a more resilient company and to create a more resilient workplace. PKNS has been awarded with the highest GBI score ever. Indeed, it's GBI double platinum and also LEED platinum, and proposes a large, accessible green roof that gives back to the city a part of the footprint that the building takes. But also, besides the Sky Park, continuation of the ground park by the lake, PKNS headquarters also responds to the city and to the street front by segmenting the linear block into a smaller permeable block that allow visual corridors and breeze to the lake nearby or to the adjacent lake. As mentioned at the beginning of this talk, VERITAS has not only done sustainable or resilient buildings in the last few years. Indeed, many of these notions and values are strong and visible in some of our earlier proposals as far as 20 or 30 years ago. And the current health concerns and the urban agenda have proven how innovative indeed our proposals were even 20 or 30 years ago. In this case, in the early 2000s, we were commissioned to design this area of the Putrajaya Boulevard, which will accommodate 4 ministry buildings or department buildings. And we were as well commissioned to design the Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment. In this building, at the ground floor, we incorporate indoor streets that allow public to walk through the building, creating a more pedestrian-friendly city. And within the building, we created sky gardens that allow people to be in touch with nature, even at their workplace. In 2011, Menara Binjai was one of the first office buildings in Malaysia to be certified GBI, Malaysia's Green Building Index. Indeed, and this is very amazing, when the building was designed, GBI did not even exist. But so what I'm trying to say is that we were already designing green buildings or sustainable buildings before people started to talk about green buildings and GBI. And this building was GBI Gold and also Green Mark Gold. Sky gardens, roof gardens in a high rise in the middle of the city allow people to have a piece of green and to access nature in their workplaces. The DG headquarters is one of the first pioneers paperless buildings in Malaysia and anticipated the importance of sustainable and resilient workplaces. This building was completed in 2004. We carved a large central atrium that is sheltered from the outdoors and allows the whole community to come together. The atrium is a very versatile, multifunctional space that serves both for the daily gathering of the staff, but also for corporate events. Indeed, at the end of this linear atrium that cuts across the entire building, we took advantage of this natural hill and stream to create an outdoor space for colleagues and for social events. Another headquarters completed recently, the AirAsia headquarters in KLIA 2. In this case, The aesthetic of the building is inspired by aviation geometries. You feel like walking under the belly of a large jumbo plane. And we created another large central atrium sheltered from the outdoors that allows the very large AirAsia community to come together and to also carry their corporate events in this space. It's an amazing, amazingly beautiful space. It's plenty of references to aviation geometries, the steel structure that gives shape to the wings of a plane, or the traffic control tower that becomes a hanging meeting room. But also the roof became an unexpected social space. And indeed, after a couple of years, after completing the building, Tony Fernandez called us to develop a landscape proposal to also take advantage of the roof. Saloma Link in between KLCC and Kampong Baru is the last example of how architecture and urban planning can bring communities together to create a more resilient city. This is a picture that keeps striking me and at the same time inspiring me. The Klang River and the 6-lane Akle created a physical disconnection between Kampong Baru and KLCC, and for many years, despite being adjacent to one another, there was a limited infrastructure providing a direct access for pedestrians between the two districts. The Saloma Link, as a catalyzer for a much larger urban regeneration program, tried to address this issue by shortening the otherwise 30 minutes walk to a 15 minutes walk from Masjid Jamek to KLCC Park, or 10 minutes from the Kampong Baru LRT station to KLCC. This bridge has opened many opportunities for the users and encourages walkability in the city, but it has also allowed many businesses to flourish at the Kampong Baru site and to create a more vibrant urban setting. And we are sure that it's more than just a bridge. It's part of an effort to encourage pedestrian and cycling mobility and to promote sustainable urban design with better landscape, better street furniture and lighting, envisioning the future redevelopment of Kampong Baru. The fourth principle that defines resilient buildings is when our buildings are regenerative and restorative. This means that they are highly engineered buildings that incorporate systems that reduce the demand on fossil energy sources and infrastructure systems while reducing the carbon footprint. In just a decade, since 2010, we have completed more than 35 green rated buildings in the region and some all over the world. Indeed, as mentioned, I believe that no other practice in Malaysia has completed as many green certified buildings. And I will show you some of them some of them shortly, and some of the key achievements that some of these green buildings have achieved. We have spoken about Menara Binjai and about its pioneering green certification, the pocket gardens and the roof garden. But also in Menara Binjai, we find our British High Commission, which is the only LEED certified embassy in Malaysia and one of the earliest LEED certified workplaces in the country. Menara Etika in Bangsar uses only 40% of the energy used by a typical office building of the same size, and reduces the carbon footprint of the building by 55%. PKNS, again, reduces or saves almost 2 million ringgit a year in electricity bill, and it also uses 40% of the energy that a typical office building of the same size may use. and produces only 45% of the carbon footprint that a typical office building does. Menara Jayland in Johor is the first grade A office building in Johor Bahru to achieve GBI gold rating, and it saves 1.7 million ringgit in electricity bills a year. It also introduced, even 4 years ago or 5 years ago, when the building was designed, a ultraviolet light filters that improve the indoor air quality, which has proven to be very important in the last couple of years. The International School of Kuala Lumpur, or ISKL, is the lowest carbon footprint educational building ever designed in Malaysia. It's a very highly engineered building that uses technology as part of the learning experience and subconsciously educates the children on a more responsible use of energy and spaces throughout their daily classes and habits. iScale uses 56% of the energy and 51% of the water that a similar school may use, and saves 2.2 million electricity a year from the bills. It also produces 56% of the carbon footprint that a school of the same size produces. The Reda Women AIDS Organization Orphanage, which we have just completed a few weeks ago, has achieved the highest platinum green rating ever in Malaysia. And Petronas Leadership Center, Petronas commissioned us to design for them a resilient, self-sustained, future-proof building. Some of the technological innovations that are put in place in this building are the solar panels that literally colonize the entire roof of the building and produce 75% of the electricity that the entire building uses, and the man-made lake that cools down the building and also serves as rainwater harvesting and management and flood management system. So this way, the building and the building settings become part of the learning experience and subconsciously promote among the future leaders of Petronas a more responsible use of energy. Oxley Towers, when completed, will have all its 6 components green certified: offices, 2 hotels, 2 service apartment blocks, and retail. All 6 will be green certified. And the last, sustainability and resilience are also embedded in our winning proposal for the future capital of Indonesia in Kalimantan, Nusantara, where the essential services for the city are put in place, and the latest technology are put in place to reduce the city's waste and the energy consumption, but also, very importantly, to manage the flood or the water raise level due to climate change through this immense central lake, man-made lake. But probably this Nusantara deserves a talk on its own. The 5th principle for resilient design in architecture is durability. And durability defines the ability of buildings to offer long-lasting, long-term value for its occupants and also for the owners of the building. You may know that building structures are generally designed for a 50 years lifespan, but with regular maintenance, structures can last easily 100 years and more. And building mechanical and electrical services are designed to last between 15 to 30 years, but with regular maintenance can last up to 50 years. I heard something. Is all okay?
All okay, Miguel, sorry. We got disconnected. Sorry.
All right, that's all right, no worries. So I continue on this note about durability, I would like to highlight the obvious importance of choosing the right materials and specifications, and especially in severe weathers like ours in Malaysia, with high temperature, high solar incidence, and high rainfall regimes, but also the key importance of maintenance. And this means designing buildings and details that are easy to maintain or that even require little maintenance, and also studying carefully the maintenance and the access to the more exposed and less accessible areas of the building, which is the facade. As an example of this strategy, I show you the several forms of BMU, building maintenance units, that are used in Oxley. We have telescopic arm gondolas that reach the facade at the tallest towers, or the rope access to clean the bridges facade, or the monorail cradles to clean the underside of the bridges, and also the parts of the facade that are not accessible below the bridges. And this whole display of systems, of maintenance systems, ensure that the maintenance, the cleanliness, the watertightness, and also the safety of the facade, of the horizontal and vertical elements of the facade, are always kept in good condition. The second last principle for resilient design is value. And this means that certain buildings are magnets for financial activities, and indeed some of them can be urban catalysts for the development or for the regeneration of a certain part of the city, a certain area of the city, bringing economic benefits to the surrounding community. But also there are buildings that create value for their neighborhood and for the properties around the building, even often more than the building itself, or buildings that symbolize landmarks that guide users in the city. In this regard, we have spoken about urban corridors, like the one that cuts across Oxley and connects KLCC Park with the Alanampang, or the boulevard in the Business and Leisure Park, where we have proposed a semi-outdoor path that connects all the neighboring buildings within the master plan, and creates a very important, and has a very important role in the pedestrian network of green spaces throughout the master plan. Star residences, where the boulevard along the retail sets up precedents for the improvement of the walkability in this area of the city, or Saloma Link, that brings together Kampong Baru and KLCC, encouraging pedestrian and cycling mobility, and also allowing businesses to flourish at both ends of the link. This exercise has been, more recently we have completed this exercise in Damansara. Is a office block constructed in the 70s, and we have converted one of the blocks, the one closer to the street, to the main street, from office to retail. You may have seen, I suppose, this complex is called Complex Pejabat Damansara, or KPD. This exercise has been completed recently and has raised the value of the entire complex by allowing the owner to attract more appealing tenants and rental rates for the rest of the blocks, of the office blocks within the compound. And these are some of the pictures of the completed building, a refurbishment, almost surgical, with a very tight budget, where we have achieved this intervention. And these are some of the pictures of the internal areas. I encourage you to visit the building. It's a quite nice exercise in Damansara. And this project as well, indeed, I put it together this morning. It's a very beautiful exercise done in early 2000 by some of my colleagues. It's a refurbishment of the original 29-story Wisma Lee Rubber in Jalan Melaka, at the heart of the old city center, the business district at the old city center. The original building was completed in the 80s in late international style, and featuring these strong horizontal lines and the penthouses as well with this horizontal expression. We were commissioned to redevelop this building, not to repurpose. The building keeps being office or offices, but to make it more appealing. And we simplified the expression of the horizontal lines by emphasizing the verticality of the building with the curtain wall and this glass box that at night becomes a feature of the building. It's a beautiful structure and an example of how buildings, not at all indeed from the 80s, not a very old building, can be brought back to present and become relevant again in the city. And the last aspect of resilient design in architecture is cultural responsiveness. And this notion values buildings' ability to reflect the local culture and to create memories for the community. Some of our projects have recurrently appeared under most of these principles for resilient design. Again, Oxley, the facade is inspired by the Songket traditional patterns, and under this weaving concept, local and cultural references of arts and crafts, and in this case, the metallic threads of these geometrical Songket patterns are reinterpreted as facade motifs and technology. Some of the most celebrated Islamic patterns are reinterpreted as contemporary facade screens in our PKNS headquarters, or in our Indian High Commission in Kuala Lumpur. We draw inspiration from the Tree of Life, which is associated with many Hindu gods, and that has a very pivotal importance in Hindu mythology. It's a symbol or a motif that illustrates life in all aspects, and it also symbolizes personal development and uniqueness and beauty. The Tree of Life is extensively used in the solid facade of the auditorium or as facade screen defining the drop-off space, but also the geometry of the famous Indian stepwells is explored and reinterpreted as facade for the conciliary building of the Indian High Commission. Saloma Link appears as well under this chapter. The design, and this is something that you may not know or may not have noticed, is inspired by the Sidi Junjun, an ornamental flower offered in Malay weddings as a symbol of unity. And this concept signifies as well the importance of uniting these two prominent fabrics of the city, KLCC and Kampung Baru, with the vision of making KL a more walkable and environmentally friendly city. The daylight casts shades and shadows, and the bridge cladding creates these beautiful effects during the day and at night. And since it opened in 2019, late 2019, it has become a landmark to the city or in the city public realm, and certainly has become one of the most popular attractions in the city. So in summary, we have spoken about seven principles for resilient design in architecture. We have spoken about redundancy, adaptability and flexibility, interdependency, regenerative and restorative buildings, durability, value, and cultural responsiveness. So I hope that this allows you to understand wherever you are proposing a new building or revisiting some of your designs, whether your buildings are resilient or not, and how you can as well contribute to creating more resilient buildings, communities, and even cities in the future. Thank you.
Round of applause for our guest speaker for today, Dr. Miguel. Okay, Miguel, in case you cannot hear, the students are clapping actually. Okay, giving you a very loud round of applause.
Oh, I would love to hear that. I would love to hear that.
Okay. Okay. I wish we could record the applause, but guys, everyone, you can use your virtual applause, okay, for our a very an eye opener, okay, for everyone, okay, dealing with the principles of resilient design and architecture. Okay, so thank you, Miguel, for a very clear for defining it very clearly to every one of us. We have learned a lot, okay, not only the students but likewise my colleagues and myself. Okay, so now I think the students and us will remember. We always remember the five elements of Lynch, 6 dimensions of Carmona, the 7 principles of qualities of responsive environment, and now we will add the 7 principles of resilient design and architecture as presented by Miguel today. Okay. I'm sure that it will be very essential because we're working on a project which aims to impact the society and the community. So besides sustainability, of course, resiliency is a key factor to make that a successful and to achieve a successful and very effective project. So hopefully we can also invite you for the final review, Miguel. That will be face to face if you're free. I'll leave the floor. I think I wouldn't ask too much question because I want to give the time to my colleague and the students. So feel free to unmute your microphone, Ben, Manny, if you have any question, Manny. And
Should I stop sharing?
Yeah. And to all the students, please feel free to unmute your microphone or ask the question using the chat box. Okay, from John Lee, there's a question, Miguel.
Hi, Dr. Miguel. I
Hi, John.
I think we met at the 5th place, the site visit.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I remember you.
By the way, I wanted to ask about the Saloma link bridge. Because I noticed about the Saloma link bridge as it links between the city center and Kampung Baru. I just wanted to know why, like, in the design process, was the River of Life not highlighted in the Saloma link bridge? Like, because the River of Life runs perpendicular underneath the link bridge. Does that like go against the cultural responsiveness of the design or something?
Okay. Well, there are many motifs that we may have picked for to draw inspiration for the design. But in this case, I think that the City Junjun was a very inspirational geometry, being a Malay enclave, Kampung Baru, being the City Junjun, a ornamental flower used in Malay weddings and symbolizing unity, that we thought that was also key to bring together KLCC and Kampung Baru that had been traditionally separated, or for many years separated because of the river and the Agle. So perhaps I was not involved in that particular project, but I understand that the City Junjun was a much more promising reference to create this bridge. And the River of Life, on the other hand, has been used as a design reference or as a design inspiration in some other of our projects. Perhaps we also try not to rely always on the same inspiration. If you visit the LRT station, the underground LRT station in Pasar Seni, the facade paneling, not the facade, sorry, the cladding paneling along the corridors connecting the stations has this Y shape of the river of life, the convergence of the river of life. And there are some posters showing the history of how KL was formed around the confluence of the rivers. So perhaps these two things. First, Siri Junjung was a more inspirational reference for us, and also not to use always the same design inspiration that we have used before in other projects. Thank you, John.
Thank you for this question.
Thanks, John. Anyone from my colleague, Manin, Bang, Manny? Manny? Manny's beside me.
Yes, yes.
Things. Can I?
Hi, Ed. Ed. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. Can I ask a question? Because since Saloma Ling was brought up in the presentation, also in the discussion, as I've been to the Saloma Ling recently. I think last week. Unfortunately, the lift was broke down, so we couldn't use the lift. So we had to use the staircase, and we went up from the Kampung Baru and we walked across the river and went down by the ramp towards to the other side. I thought the ramp was quite brilliantly designed, so the journey was quite interesting. So I was just wondering, during the design process, why can't they actually design build a ramp across both sides of the bank rather than having on one side and the other side they propose a lift, because lift, as we know, that it's gonna have very high maintenance from time to time. So yeah, that's my question, sir. Because I know that you weren't involved in the process.
That's all right. That's all right. I know the answer.
Yeah.
The answer is that the bridge is part of a larger building that has not been constructed. The leaf or the bridge lands in a cultural center at the Kampung Baru site. But at that moment, the available resources only allowed us to build the bridge itself. So in the future, as part of the master plan of Kampung Baru that we have as well proposed, the landing of the bridge at the Kampung Baru site will link to a cultural center and to a larger landscape area with ramps to make it more accessible. But that involves purchasing the adjacent land next to the landing of the bridge and redeveloping the whole area. So this lift and staircase that you see now is a temporary arrival until the rest of the master plan nearby are developed.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Edward.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks, Miguel. Students are a bit shy. You can type in your question in the chat box if you're shy to ask it in person. Okay, we're planning to visit the Saloma Bridge. The Saloma Bridge, Miguel. Probably this semester, we're planning to have like a group photo. Group photo in that area. So it's a good visit also. We can see the cultural expressiveness of the building. Yeah.
I'm sure that most of you have already been to the bridge at least once and taken an Instagram picture. But yeah, a group photo will be quite nice too. You need to take turn, because every time that I pass by is plenty of people modeling and walking through the bridge and taking videos. So you will need to wait a while if you want to get a group picture there. You need to queue.
You'll be surprised how many vlogs people
for
did.
some reason. For some reason, I really admire the view looking down to the cemetery. I just find it is really awesome. When you walk down, you look at the cemetery. Oh, that was really nice.
Oh, the view of the cemetery.
Yeah, that was.
Okay.
I think John has made a comment. It's really beautiful.
Very well kept.
Thank you. So I think that are we looking at doing studio where we emphasize on resilient design. Prince, are you guys looking into that? I think.
Yeah, we're looking into that. Also, we're looking into the affordable housing studio. So probably hopefully in the near future, I can discuss it with Veronica and my colleague. So we can park it under one studio and have a good, as usual, support from Veritas. Again, thank you for your support. I remember I think it was 2018 when you provide workshop and the architectural design competition for the semester 6 students. And it was a very memorable design competition. So hopefully we'll do it again soon. Okay.
All right.
But I know you're quite every year you're doing the lecture for CCDS, Cultural Community and Culture Design Studio for Masters, right? So hopefully for ADP we get more activities, collaboration from Veritas.
We look forward.
Looking forward to that also. I think they're quite quiet today. Normally they have questions. So probably you made it very clear for them. So that's why there's one question from Gilbert. Yeah. I want to know how you feel when you are exploring your resilient design.
How do I feel? Well, I feel perhaps to me it's a sense of rediscovery. It may sound a bit poetical, but the first statement that I opened the talk with is that sustainability and resilient design are nothing new. And indeed, we have been constantly designing resilient and sustainable buildings, and we are now simply repackaging as something else, something that appears appealing to society and to our clients. But the sense of discovery means that when we have crystallized these 7 principles for resilient design, and we look back into our projects and what we did 10 years ago, or 20 years ago, or 30 years ago, we realize, sorry, that indeed many of these principles that seem to be trending now were indeed incorporated in many of our projects many years ago. So indeed it's nothing new, but it's a beautiful surprise to understand that indeed we have been doing this all this while. So it's a sense of discovery, it's a sense of rediscovery and satisfaction. This is how I feel about exploring resilient design within the buildings that we do and the buildings that we have done. So Prince, don't worry. If there are no questions, we can continue.
I think I have a final question. Oh, there's one more question from Tanya. Yeah. Okay.
Hi, Dr. Miguel, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. You did mention about the cultural responsiveness to the building, and we have seen how it was respond through the facade of the building. Just wondering, were there any other cultural responsiveness that has been done in the internal of the building?
Yes, local references to art and craft and traditions and social values are always carried throughout everything that we do. And sometimes it translates into the facades, and sometimes it translates into the interior design of the lobbies of the public areas. But the reason why I have shown the facade of the building is perhaps because that's the part of the building that everybody can get to enjoy. You don't need to get inside the building to feel that the building is somehow related to you. So when we design a building, and particularly when we envision the facade, we hope that people passing by the building identify something that belongs to them as well, and they feel some sense of ownership and appreciation towards the building that otherwise may be alien to them. So but it's not that only happens externally, it also happens inside of our buildings.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Final question, Miguel. I think that I'll ask the final question. Normally for the, like, when I read 7 qualities of responsive environment, the 7th is the hardest to achieve. Okay, is it the same case as the 7 principles of resilient design?
Okay, that's a very good question, Prince. Actually, it allows me to go through one by one. I think that if you think about easier and difficult, probably we are talking about 2 aspects. Technical complexity is one, and cost. So if we were to put these items or these principles for resilient design in order of difficulty, certainly cultural responsiveness is the easiest because there is no cost incurred to respond to this. Durability is also, and I hope not surprisingly, a very easy principle to achieve. Designing details that are easy to maintain is not exclusive to costly buildings. We can design humble structures that keep well over time. Value and interdependency are also principles that are not necessarily expensive to achieve because are related to design decisions, generally passive, that we can make during the design stage. Adaptability and flexibility as well is a very passive principle where certain decisions from the planning or from the design stage can be made, but perhaps the most difficult principles to achieve, both because incur technical expertise and investment from the stakeholders, are providing buildings that are regenerative and restorative, because this involves investment on technology and systems that can be recovered after a certain number of years, but of course requires a certain capital investment to go in place first. And the most difficult to achieve, also because of the cost and the technical complexity, is redundancy, because basically, as the word says, you provide 2 systems to support every need of the building. So some of them can be rationalized, like the structure, but still there is a certain degree of redundancy, of repetitiveness, and certainly when we duplicate any system, any mechanical system, there is a cost that is incurred. So, but I would think that we can, if we were to do a scorecard that we haven't developed yet, similar to the green rating tools, where we tick on the boxes of the things that we can achieve, there are items that we can achieve under each of these 7 categories that do not require any money, that do not require any cost. For example, placing the generator at the basement or at the podium does not incur any cost. But if you put it at the basement and there is a flood, your generator will be underwater. But if you put it at the podium, it will be protected. So, but there is no cost. You can just do it. So, so this will be the answer. Some of them are for free, and some of them require technical and cost investment. But all of them can be achieved in a very reasonable manner within any of the projects that we design every day.